waiting, interviewing. You know that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all roomy up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
What's up?
What is up? The sky is falling.
You guys ready for Rails World?
I did get a hotel.
When?
I don't know. Ask Drew. Drew and I have been splitting hotel rooms the last several conferences because it's way cheaper and we are perfectly acceptable roommates. So
I'm sharing an Airbnb with Mario and Harry.
really, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Andrew, thanks for that.
Well,
We're sharing an Airbnb.
we already knew that y'all had a place. So
Well, we got the place a week ago. So
yeah, we booked ours months ago.
yeah. Cool. That's fine. Now I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, same. My literal thing in 2021 was that I went to a conference without a hotel room.
Yeah. But it's 2024 and you've grown.
I've grown since then.
I'm ready for Rails World, I guess. I'm for the first time ever flying first class because by doing that, I reached a certain amount on a credit card that allowed me to get 25,000 free miles. So I'm cooking.
Free. You paid extra for the free miles.
Well, yeah, but it was one of those deals like you reach a certain amount of money on the card in a certain amount of time and they give you all those free miles. I like free miles. I don't know what they're used for, but they don't seem to equate directly when I want to use them.
Be careful
No, of
because I
course not.
assume you got those American miles and those things expire.
Do they really?
Yeah, American's the only one I've ever had that's expired miles on me.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I better use my miles. I have a bunch of them now.
Better?
Excited about Rails World because Taylor Ott will be there. That's the only reason I'm going now. I was getting ready to sell my ticket.
I figured you'd wear your Laravel t-shirt the whole time.
I'm just going to bring my coffee mug and ask him to sign it every hour on a different spot.
Do it.
I like it.
You won't.
I won't because I'm so OCD traveling with a mug and like that.
Yeah,
breaking
it
in
can
my
break.
suitcase. That would
be
stress me
annoying.
out.
Be shards everywhere.
Yeah, shards of Laravel just stabbing me.
Yeah. We're going to Canada. That'll be exciting. I've been once. I got an infectious disease while I was there. So looking forward to that not happening again.
Do you still have the infectious disease?
Well, not that one, but
It's where he started using single table inheritance.
yeah, that's where I contracted STI. But no, I'm excited. Be fun.
You
Yeah.
think they're gonna do the Rails 8 beta?
Probably.
Everything's wrapping up or whatever. Roughly right now, solid cable got added. Or the other one, solid cache, solid queue are now like default as
Yeah.
well. Solid record, still waiting on that one.
Solid.
Shout out to my boy Nick Pezza for Solid Cable.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Because he had built that separately. Just
Yeah.
and it got adopted and renamed. Did it have a different name?
I think it had the same name. I think so. Can't quite remember.
Solid.
I had this repo starred for a while and I was like, oh, it's still starred when it moves organizations. That's cool. But no, it's been around for several months at least.
When you told us about it yesterday, I was thinking about the thundering herd problem we had with Action Cable, where like we deploy and then 15,000 connections would all be hitting the server trying to come back.
Yeah.
So that'd be a lot of fun with the database.
That would be a lot of fun with the database.
All of these are also set up as separate databases now too.
Oh, that's good.
So just so you're aware on that. So like your solid queue jobs, a separate queue database. It's still your one database server, separate databases on the same. I always get confused trying to explain that. The database you think of as the database server, but there's databases inside of that.
Sometimes they're called schemas, but I think of schemas just a table design, but in certain contexts it means whole like combination of tables.
Your SQLite will be separate files. Unless you're designing this to run on different disks or something, then they're all going to hit the same server.
I was thinking about this recently because I tried to deploy an instance of my app in Finland. I think that's where Hetzner has one of their EU locations. And it slowed down my app tremendously. I geo-steered people closer to that one too there and realized afterwards, well, yeah, it's because my database is in Virginia and I don't want to try and replicate it or anything like that right now. But not just that, I run solid cache on there. And so it was probably doing a ton of SQL queries, just trying to load like one job board, just going back and forth across
around the world. That's funny. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't really know if they nailed all those things yet on Fly, but that was kind of the cool thing that they were aiming to solve, is all the replication and everything else that makes that as easy as you hope it would be. But it's, at the moment, everywhere else at least, quite challenging to do that. And maybe that would work too, is you could just set up separate database configurations and have two separate databases, but also then you have two separate databases now to manage. So ideally, you're not doing that, but also could maybe help with keeping European data in Europe or whatever and whatnot too.
I could finally be GDPR compliant, which is my dream.
Yeah.
That's what I aim for in life.
If your page isn't at least 75% cookie pop-up, are you even GDPR compliant?
Just pissed me off right there. You just pissed me off.
I've been working on solid GDPR, my new Rails plugin.
And it just is a pop-up that won't close.
Yeah. It's just every time you try and close it, it creates another record in the database.
Sounds solid to me.
Yeah. This also feels like the quickest turnaround above Rails 7.2 and then 8. I don't know. I think that's cool. I think it's good because I feel like one of the things they've talked about was when to get on more like regular release schedule, and maybe Rails World kind of helps solidify that, make it solid.
There's a long time between 5.2 and 6, right?
I don't remember, but I think there was some seriously long time there. And then August 1st, Raphael updated the maintenance policy, which is pretty much setting timelines that'll be regular and everything, if I remember right, which will be nice. And I think they're still aiming to have 8.1 come out 6 months after Rails World. So we'll have kind of a always expected kind of schedule and stuff, hopefully. Maybe it'll end up being major versions every Rails World or something, but I know at least the maintenance schedules aim to be a lot more regular cadence and whatnot. And didn't Ruby also get an update to their release schedule too? I think they did not too long ago, where they're like, every X months we're going to cut a release for 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3.
I don't remember seeing that, but I did just see recently that they finished moving to Prism.
Yeah, I think they got all the test pass on that.
I think so.
And it got merged, but it's not the default yet. Unsure if it will be the default. We should have Kevin back on.
Yeah, why would it not be the default? Why have two?
Well, so my understanding is that there is another project that maybe already in Ruby core that has become kind of active in a similar vein. It's got its side between the two, I guess. I'm not sure. We should have Kevin on and explain that to us.
We'll have to have Kevin back on because I've got questions now about that.
I just found on the Ruby 3.35 release schedule, the release announcement, they have a note about the release schedule here. As previously announced, we intend to release the latest stable Ruby version, currently Ruby 3.3, every 2 months following a 0.1 release. We expect to release Ruby 3.36 on November 5th, 3.37 January 7th. So that's kind of cool. 3.3.0 had a bug that would segfault in Docker on Apple Silicon or whatever. There's been so many issues with Docker recently that I can't remember them all. But that was one that I was waiting for a long, long time on. And then it was easier to just modify the Docker file to compile Ruby from scratch and apply the patch, which sucks because that takes forever. The initial build or whatever, at least once you're done, you're kind of done. But it was welcome news to see that they'll have like a every 2 months kind of schedule. So we at least know when things are coming out. It's kind of painful to watch all these fixes drop and then not be able to use them for 6 months or something. That is not fun.
That thread in particular was just every day someone being like, any update, any update, any update? Because it got fixed immediately. It just didn't get released.
Yeah, I think Rails' release was kind of tricky because you had to release all these gems and node modules and whatever. The more of those processes for Ruby, for Rails, for any project can be automated and simplified, then we could make more releases more often. And then we could be less frustrated with waiting an unknown amount of time. It's not necessarily holding you back at work, but it's kind of frustrating to know that I can't fix this and be on the latest Ruby. And it just got to sit. Kind of tickets in your backlog that just are blocked that you cannot remove, which gets frustrating on top of everything else you've got to do on your projects. I feel like it's pretty nice to see those maintenance improvements dropping.
Chris, you were pretty busy this week.
I was.
Yeah. That project?
Yes.
Was that last week, this week?
Yeah. I think it was Monday. We kind of deployed publicly SellRepo, I think last week, and then just kind of announced it Monday, which is pretty much the Jumpstart Rails. You buy a license, we add you to the GitHub, kind of extracting that out, which I've wanted to do for like 6 years, finally into a little Rails app that you can buy. And we'll add you to the GitHub repo for the source code of the service you just used called sellrepo.com, which has been pretty fun. I didn't do my proper marketing for it. I was a typical developer entrepreneur and just kind of announced it, mentioned it a couple times, and then like, hey, it's done. Here it is, which isn't necessarily great for making sales day one or whatever, but we've sold a good handful, and it's cool to see people like getting ideas. I've got these dot files or something that I should just package up and make available to people for $10 or something. And it's a cool way of taking stuff that you've already got built, maintained or whatever, and just making it accessible to some other people and giving you a way to hopefully make a few bucks on the side. So it's been good. Been trying to fix little things here and there. Of course, the favorite that we all love is that you can't really, well, Stripe only generates invoices for subscription stuff, and then Stripe checkout doesn't really give you an invoice, so you got to make your own PDFs, and then adding billing details for company VAT ID and all that stuff. I was hoping not to have to add a billing page to the app, but we are today after all, because you can't really use the Stripe billing portal for everything, unfortunately. It's my favorite payments, but all the payment stuff is built on Pay, so I like grabbed some stuff, and as I was going, I was, okay, this is extra code that's in the controller or whatever, the application. I might as well just make a helper and Pay to simplify and stuff. So we're also using Madman for the admin area, and that got tons of updates in order to make it functional and stuff. So it's been a good excuse for me to like launch little products, but also do a ton of open source work alongside. That probably also delayed it by a good month or more, but I'm getting there slowly.
I've got dot files. I'm gonna start selling
dude.
like bash functions.
Yeah. You can sell fancy PS1 environment variables to change your prompt.
I'm just going to sell a repo full of secrets I've scraped off of GitHub, full of AWS secrets or something. That's fun. That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's just a Rails app?
Yep. Rails 7.2 will be Rails 8 very shortly. It doesn't do a ton, but there's all the weeds of, there's all kinds of little things. The weeds are where all the time goes. So you do one-time purchases. Cool, this is super simple. Then you do subscriptions and you're like, well, I guess if the subscription goes unpaid or it's canceled or whatever these statuses are, we have to then go and remove the users from GitHub and so on. And then, well, what happens if they've been invited to GitHub, like on an org, but they haven't accepted the invite? So then you can't remove them as a collaborator because they're technically not a collaborator. So you got to also remove them as an invitation if they haven't accepted and yada, yada. So it's those weeds that you end up spending most of the time on. It sounds like it's an easy project you can do in 20 minutes or whatever, but the reality of doing a polished product and everything is, of course, never that simple. And that's where all the time goes into building something like this and whatnot. But it's cool to see if somebody's planning to sell a course through GitHub this way, which would be neat. Don Felker was talking about selling his middleman configuration for CDNs and Open Graph and all that stuff, which would be cool to see. I still have my personal site on a really old Jekyll setup that I don't want to touch anymore. And I'd probably benefit a lot from switching over to your middleman template. So you should definitely sell that and whatever. So it's cool. I think a lot of people have a way. It makes an easy way for people to sell something for $20, $50 or whatever on the side. Maybe can start making a few dollars that they've never done before. So hopefully it opens up some opportunities for people.
Okay, I have a question. I'm a scumbag, right? And my first idea was I'll just put a README in a repo and sell it for like $100. But if you buy that, you're going to be pissed off, right? And want a refund.
Yes. Your README might be really good though.
That's true, but it's not going to be. It's going to be all the dank memes I can't post on Twitter.
That sounds worth $100. It's a Rails app you deploy, so it's your Stripe credentials, your server, wherever you want to host it. It's just a stock Rails app. So if you get a chargeback, it happens to you because it's your business. It's not a platform. That was kind of the main goal. I love what 37 Signals is doing with Once and having an option here that, you want to maybe see if you can make $1,000 on the side. Well, you can go try and sell a bunch of different products and see if anybody buys any of them. But you're not paying $30 a month or whatever it is for a store platform. You can pay for this once and then just try things out and see what sticks and whatever without any sort of ongoing risk of eventually just losing all the money you make from it because you're getting those monthly fees or whatever. So it's a one-time payment, which I think makes it really nice. It's also another sort of project you could buy that if you wanted to see how I write code or whatever, could be an option for that. I know a lot of people buy Jumpstart for that reason. I've still got to go through and finish out the test suite and whatnot, but it's definitely a much smaller application. I thought about building it on top of Jumpstart, but I didn't really want to have all the extra features we weren't going to use and maintain that too. We'll just make a brand new Rails app. Gives me a chance to use import maps and stuff. Side tangent. Been working on the Tailwind CSS stimulus components recently, fixing whatever pull requests and other issues that came through recently. I'd love to just drop ES build and the bundle steps and minify and all that stuff and just have a package, a bunch of files that are exported. Easy peasy. And that works with import maps. What doesn't work actually is JSPM and how the import map Rails gem now works. So you can't specify a CDN URL anymore, from what I can tell. That was replaced with, it will now download it from jspm.io, but it will only download the main module or main JavaScript file, which means that my version 6, which unbundled everything. Now does not work with import map Rails. I have to go back and add the bundling back in so that we have a single file so that import map Rails will download it. And the trouble is there's a PR to download all the files, which could work, but all of those are then going to have imports in the files, which will need to be replaced with the asset path version of it, which has the SHA at the end or whatever, the hash or the digest. So that's not a simple change either. I wish that we could still use the CDN for it because it would just make my life easy here. I understand having the local one too, but it's kind of annoying either way. I really don't have anything that I need to bundle or minify or transform or anything. It's just some stimulus controllers that I just want to give you. And I don't want to have to pre-process any of this. But it turns out I have to. So that sucks. And then of course the worst part is actually GSPM. It's failing internally or something. So it's tied to JSPM from what I can tell. And so because it won't compile version 6 or 601 or 602, you just can't use it with the latest version now. So yeah, we've got an open issue. I was talking to Connor about it and he didn't know either. He had helped somebody else try and debug JSPM. So he opened an issue on JSPM's GitHub repository and we're waiting to see. We've triggered the build 35 times, but it still shows version 5 as the latest version. And there's no errors, there's no messages or any way to look up why it failed or whatever. So that's been fun. I want to use import maps for something especially this simple, but it turns out it's not that simple.
This is why you shouldn't use import maps. And I thought that we had gotten past this, but here we are right back here. Do we need to bring Connor back on the show to explain why there's...
It's just one of those things where I'm like, I just want to copy these controllers into the app or something instead of using a package period because they're all tiny. They're not that big. But the only trouble becomes, well, the modals or whatever use the transition library. So we got to make sure we include that file as well. And then it becomes, I got to read every file to copy paste it over, which is no longer as easy as just the stimulus. If it was just a stimulus controller, I would say like, here's a repo. There's no package. You copy paste it into your application. You can update it periodically if you want. But when you have some utility files or whatever else, then it gets to be a little bit too much of a pain to deal with that. So one of those days, wish it was easier.
Just another day of JS bundling.
Yo, quick question for you. Do you want higher clarity into production but don't have the time to become a wizard in observability? Honeybadger Insights is exactly what you need. Forget the old school trio of logs, metrics, and traces. We're talking structured events that don't just sit there. They're your treasure map to solving mysteries in your app. With Honeybadger, sling your logs and events into the mix and voila, you just unlock the power of Honeybadger's new query language, BadgerQL. It's like having a conversation with your data. Ask it anything, turn mishaps into metrics, and showcase your wins on dashboards that even the marketing team will drool over. And guess what? This isn't just for big spenders. Honeybadger's got you covered with a free plan that packs a punch, including error tracking, uptime monitoring, sleek status pages, and more. Oh, and speaking of errors, Honeybadger treats them like VIPs at the club. With Insights and BadgerQL, your errors aren't just problems, they're opportunities. Explore your data in ways you didn't think were possible and get the insights that you deserve. Check out honeybadger.io. That's right, honeybadger.io.
I will tell you, I read through, I don't know how many docs pages about what are the actual options in package.json that you can define. The official NPM one has a handful. And then there's all these others that you read in blog posts and other things that are like, well, this tool will look for this key that isn't official and whatever.
Yeah.
What
like
the hell? Why
and
are
jest.
we doing this?
And ESLint. I actually have argued that in Podia recently, someone introduced like a new config file. And I feel like we should just put this in package.json, especially for like a Rails app. It's easier just to have as much as your JavaScript config in there as possible. I do agree that it is confusing, especially if you're looking for like a prettier config or ESLint config and you don't see it and it's in package.json, and that's not a standard. So just a tool is like, yeah, I will read from this if it's there, but I enjoy having it there.
I do like that too, where I was using NP to publish the node module, and it ensures that you run your tests and checks to see like, oh, you're adding a new file. Are you sure you want to do that? Did you accidentally add your .env file or something? Helpful little additions over just npm publish, but it was the same thing. Or you could go into package.json and say np skip running the test suite before you publish or whatever it is. I love that. It's just kind of the configuration of the CLI commands that I don't have to remember anymore. That's pretty nice. And if your Tailwind config is pretty much one or two changes to change the gray to neutral gray or something, it'd be cool not to have a Tailwind config file. Because I don't know how many repositories just are stuffed full with these config files now. And I remember it starting with the brew file or whatever. Now it's just the post CSS config.js, the esbuild config.js, the Tailwind config.js, yada, yada. It is getting to be insane.
Yeah, it is. And then there are people like me and Shopify who have nothing in common, but do the same thing where you take all those configs that you always use and then you package them into a plugin for Prettier or ESLint or CommitLint. And then you just bring that around and it's still just a mess.
Yeah, you've just moved the problem to another.
Yeah. Oh,
area.
but I did it. Trust.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just, here's all the stuff that's on my table. I'm just going to shove it all in the closet and then it works, but
yeah, but
I feel
yeah, it's a lot.
I don't know. It feels like we take Ruby Gems and Bundler for granted because they're so well done, so reliable, all that. And then I try and release a node module and I'm like, what the heck is going on over here? And they're just, oh, you want CommonJS? You want a module? Does this need to run in the browser? Does it need to run in Node? Oh, can the package not just take care of that internally? And why do I have to configure all this stuff? It's insane. And I still, to this day, don't understand all the different CommonJS modules. I was reading something about IIFE yesterday. It's just the acronym in the document that I was reading, whatever it was. No explanation what it is. Got to go Google that, figure out what it is. And it's wild. It is the Wild West over there.
Yeah, I always have to re-look it up. I just want to run a JavaScript file. I don't need a node package. I'm just trying to run a JavaScript file. For some reason, I have to like do all this crap. And then it's, oh, well, now you're mixing require and I just want to run this stupid file. I just wanted to write this script and run it. And you're telling me I can't do that?
Literally, I want to take these stimulus controllers and just put them in a file that you could import from a package. If you ask me to do that in a Ruby gem, that's 3 seconds. It is no problem at all. And then you try to do that in JavaScript and it's now been hours. And I'm trying to figure out why this isn't building, but it works on unpackage. But of course, why we can't use unpackage in import map Rails anymore, and losing my mind. Why did I think making this package was a good idea? At least the trick that you can do is if you're using import map Rails and there's a single bundled file that you can get, whether that's from unpackage or whatever, you can just download the file, put it in your vendor JavaScript folder with that same package name, and then you go and edit the config import map.rb and just change the comment to the matching version number, because that's the comment is where the bin import map
what the hell are you saying right now?
Yeah. You can just download the file manually, basically.
So we're right back to pre-Webpacker.
Yeah. We're way back to the original vendor JavaScript stuff. Full circle after, I don't know, 10 years or something. It's great. It's great. I love it.
This is why you shouldn't use import maps.
I think they're fine. It's just the tooling around making them is just not solidified yet.
They're fine, but they don't work
Yeah.
all the time.
That's the thing, is the import maps themselves work great, but if we can't use a CDN and these packages have multiple files, it just doesn't work. And import map Rails gem is just a little unpolished for complete usage. It sounds like it'll take care of everything for you. It just isn't finished yet. And so there's a little bit of workaround you have to do if you want to do that, which sucks, because it's just one of those things that, like, the assets have been such a pain point for any Rails developer, especially beginners. And I really, really want the beginner experience to be super smooth. And I don't know if we're going to get there.
Speaking of assets, I've been trying to crack the asset compilation caching issue on GitHub CI for a while. And finally, I thought I figured it out. Because the way the GitHub caching works, right, is it doesn't save your cache unless you manually tell it to sit, like manually call save.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way the caching works is it saves it after a successful workflow run, right? AKA when you're trying to use something that's cached and maybe you're using it in a matrix operation where you're running 45 jobs that are running a subset of your tests, every single one of them is not going to have access. They're all going to have to re-download everything if the cache is in those jobs versus having to run the caching stuff before you then do that so they can take advantage of the cache. And so I did that, and I got it so that it dropped over 30 seconds to a minute off of every single test run job container. And it added 2 minutes to the overall run because it took so long to generate the assets and then cache them that for some reason, the entirety of the test run took slightly longer, even though I dropped all that time off of the individual jobs.
Oh, goodness.
And I get that they're running in parallel, but you have to save the cache of the assets before you can run the test, or else they won't have access to it. And it's just, wow. Now I'm still in the same problem. I know that not doing this will drop X amount of time off of all our tests, but doing it in a way that is actually performant in the CI is just, I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, those are pretty tricky to do well and configure properly. Because also you run assets precompile in CI or whatever. And if that was smart enough to only do the new stuff, then you could ideally have a bunch of tiny caches for every file or something.
Yeah.
As opposed to like one big cache for all the assets. Because otherwise, you tweak an asset every PR, well, your cache is pretty much useless. If the overall cache is, let's digest everything in this folder or something, well, it changes every single pull request, so it's kind of useless.
It does change every pull request. That's why I was using the GitHub SHA as the head SHA as the cache key, because it doesn't actually really work like across pull requests as much. It definitely works for that run though.
Yeah.
So you don't really get it. It doesn't really work across main and other PR branches, but
you reminded me of why I went for the unbundled package, JavaScript package, because I've seen other node modules do this where they bundle and compile everything into the dist files and folder, and then they actually track that in their GitHub. But that makes pull requests basically impossible because every single one is going to have conflicts for all of the JS files, the common JS, the module, and then we had the source maps. So every time 4 files conflicting, and we can't merge those ever because they're bundled, which means that if I want to on GitHub fix the merge conflict, I have to just choose one. And then after I merge, compile the dist folder, because either one I picked was going to be the old code or the new code. And it might be missing something from somebody else's PR that I just merged right afterwards. So no matter what I do, I'd have to run it myself after merging. And why am I doing this? So then I was going down the rabbit hole of why are we even bundling this at all? It will work just fine with import maps without that. So I head down that direction, and then I can get rid of this folder. I can get rid of ES build and the bundle step and all this. And I just had this beautiful, like, no build node module. And then I get to the import map, the pin command, and it was, yep, we don't know what you're talking about. And I was, this isn't good. But of course, in my like static HTML file that points to the source folder, all works beautifully. I can use it from GitHub on Jumpstart and everything. Just pointed to that, and I was assuming that everything was going to be just fine when I release it. Sigh.
Alas, alas, alas.
Yeah. But that was another one that was, I got to get these dist files out of the repo because this is ridiculous. And as long as you run, I think they've renamed the command to prepare now. It used to be like
DB test prepare.
Pre-build or something for node modules before you publish. If you have some scripts set up, it'll like run those to compile, kind of like, I guess, not exactly the same, but on install of a Ruby gem with a C extension, it knows, oh, there's a C extension. Let me run that real fast for you. As the build step built into npm publish. I think it's been deprecated, so I changed to the new one, and at least now it'll run it automatically for me, so I don't make that mistake of keeping that in the repository and then making it impossible to use. The nice part is you still have things like unpackage and, in theory, JSPM.io and all of their similar tools to just grab the dist files from. But it's a little annoying because those can be named whatever, and you can't go to the GitHub to actually poke around to see what's inside the package because it does not match one-to-one. So you've got to go browse the package on Unpackage or something to see what you could even import, which is another annoying thing. It drives me absolutely mad. Or I guess you could probably read the package JSON module and main options and see what those point to. But there's often other CSS files in Tippy or Flatpicker or something else, and they're not listed there, of course. So,
Tippy. Terrible.
I want to know how many episodes of Remote Ruby we just rant about client-side assets.
Probably a decent amount.
It's like 50%.
Someone could build an AI for that, right? Chuck all our transcripts into a RAG.
And then pour some lighter fluid on it and light it.
Yeah.
Or not that kind of rag.
No, not that kind of rag. Jesus. Making Molotovs?
Yeah, well, you know.
My favorite drink.
I'm excited for Rails 8 to drop. There will be some new stuff. When do you guys get in at Rails World? Day before?
Yeah.
Monday.
Early. I'm doing like a overnight flight thingy. I will be there kind of early that day, but I'm flying out the day before overnight.
26th and 27th. Already forgot what days of the week that is.
It's on
I don't
Thursday,
even-
Friday.
I like that. It butts up to a weekend. The travel back home can be Sunday if you want and doesn't
Yeah.
have to like take another work day. It's hard when it's in the middle of the week. You get
Yeah.
in on a Monday, Jason?
Yeah, Monday through Saturday.
That's awesome. Pretty much a
Yeah.
whole week in Canada.
In Canada, yeah.
Are you guys doing a company meetup and dinner or anything? Or
If
you
we
just-
were, I wasn't invited.
Jamie's talked about doing a dinner.
but
Oh,
only
our
for the
whole-
people in the Airbnb.
Going. Yeah, just the three of us.
Our whole team, except for one's going to be there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm excited. Looking at the schedule, it's just banger after banger. All the
Yeah, there's
the
some really good
look,
talks.
They look so good. So, and then you'll have Taylor Otwell there doing reconnaissance for Laravel.
One of my
Who are we
favorite
gonna
YouTubers
record
will
a
be there.
podcast?
I want to
Whoever we
talk
want,
to Taylor
baby.
again.
I literally asked you if you wanted me to record with him while we were there, and you're like, nah.
What?
I thought it was you
Oh,
that
not
said nah.
yeah. At the conference. Yeah. I figure he's going to be crazy busy. So, yeah.
Okay.
I
was
forgot
like,
about
what
that. In person, I don't know. We could do the extremely random episode again. Just leave the door open. Whoever
As long as we
pops
talk
in.
to Andy Kroll, I'll be happy.
There you go.
Whoever we want. Hey, they should ask us.
We'll have somebody standing out by
Yeah.
the door and just directing someone random in that just happens to be walking by. Who the hell are you? Interrogate them for a minute.
Dude, I love interrogations.
Let's see. We have recording on the end of the conference. That'll be fun because I think
Yeah.
we'll have a lot to talk about after all the announcements and stuff. Some of the podcast slots were during the keynotes, which I assume most people are not going to want. I'd hate to miss those.
I thought it was, but I then also realized that Calendly converted it to Central Time.
Oh, so they were just an hour off then.
I thought ours was at 1:30, but it's 2:30
Yeah.
Eastern.
See, they're trying to be helpful, converting those timestamps for you, but
Yeah,
this is
the
one of those
time
things
it's
you don't
not.
want to. Yeah.
We want Unix time all the time.
Yeah,
Just give me an integer of times.
Yeah.
It's an
Listen,
epic.
I worked with, I won't name them. I worked with an API, and I'm used to working with Stripe, who gives Unix time, and you just say like time.at, give it that Unix time. This one was Unix time in milliseconds. So I was, wait a second, why does this expire in like the year 2555? There was no documentation. I literally had to give the number to Claude and be like, yo, what is this? So it's time.at, this timestamp divided by 1,000.
Yeah, I remember.
Because that's Unix time, right? Windows. They completely violated the standard.
Maybe it was, we were talking about that or something. I remember recently looking at some timestamps like that were in milliseconds or whatever for extra precision. But you look at it at a quick glance and you're like, this looks right. And then you actually convert it. Wait, what in the heck is this?
The other problem I had was the same organization gave me a client ID that started with a 0, and it was being converted into octals, whatever the different style of number is. And anytime I would look at it in the console, because I was reading from my credentials file, anytime I would do it, it would read out just fine. But when I would send it over HTTP, it would convert it into the wrong value altogether. And so I lost hours. I asked Harry, my coworker, can you help me with something non-work related one morning? And he was, are you sure that client ID is right? I was, yes, I've tested it 1,000 times. And we looked in the logs. I was like, what the? I had to literally wrap it in a string to get it to work. So,
yeah, it might seem annoying that a checkbox doesn't actually send a 1 or a 0. It sends a string of 1 or 0. These are the reasons why it does that instead of trying to be smart and convert it for you, because those things can represent very different things on accident pretty easily, which is no fun to debug. You can waste a ton of time doing that. And that's probably also the hardest part, that Stripe's actually really good about recording the request body and parameters and stuff. So you can actually go read and see from their side what you sent them, which can be very helpful for debugging something like this. But 99% of APIs are just like, hey, here's an error. What was it? I think it was Lemon Squeezy. So I've got a little beta integration of Lemon Squeezy in Pay and in SellRepo. I passed in one of the arguments. There's a whole slew of annoying things in their API design. For one, if you pass in custom data to checkout, they don't give you that through the API. They only include it in webhooks. For the convenience of testing locally, you have to have webhooks enabled in order to get that ID, or just don't use that feature at all, because it's pretty much useless because they couldn't be bothered to store it in their database, which is ridiculous. And then the other one that was driving me insane, I think using Stripe, copied the redirect URL or something, this parameter I pass over. Their docs say you pass in product options or whatever the options object is, and then you pass in the return URL. And I had it wrong, and I had redirect URL or whatever, vice versa. Their validations said that product options must be an array. Their docs all show that it's obviously an object, not an array. And it was all because I had one of the keys as the wrong thing, but their errors that were returning to me were like, oh, it's got to be an array. And it's, well, no, it doesn't have to be an array at all. So where the hell is this error message coming from? And it took me a good 30 minutes to realize the typo there or something, because I was inspecting with NetHTTP before we do this. We send this stuff over, we convert it to JSON, make sure that right before NetHTTP sends it is all correct. Looks fine. It's still saying somehow it's getting an array or it's not getting an array or whatever. I was losing my mind. And then you do one of those hop on tuple, you start to explain the problem, and then 2 seconds later you see your typo and God damn it. And sure enough, that's what it was. But it was, why in the heck is the array error coming from the API when arrays have nothing to do with this at all? So I don't know what's going on inside Lemon Squeezy's code base, but it's hinting that it's not great.
Sounds like you had a real sour experience with it.
They
Oh.
squeezed all your brain power out for the day.
It's like getting lemon juice in the eyes.
Dude. You gotta, squeeze a few lemons to make lemonade.
Yeah, when life gives you lemons, send the wrong
Drink
API
Sprite.
version.
Sprite? I don't know if that's a lemon.
Lime.
It's lemon lime, baby. That's what they
Bruh.
advertise.
I'm a citrus enjoyer, and Sprite to me is not citrusy.
Oh, you're more of a Sierra Mist kind of guy.
I don't think they call it that anymore.
They don't. They
renamed it.
rebranded it as
Starry.
Starry Mist or something like that, which I will never buy and refuse to buy. I'll get the knockoff Food Line brand. Sierra Wave
that's how
or
you can
whatever.
afford the red eye first class to
Yeah. Buy all
Andrew,
knockoff sodas.
Are you too young to know what Surge is?
Surge? That thing when the lightning hits?
Oh, man,
God, he's
Surge.
too young.
I can literally
Whoa.
taste Surge. when
I
you
think
say
I've
it.
heard of it.
They brought it
Yeah.
back in 2014, but you were like a year old then or something.
You know what I was old enough for? When they had a real
Ugh.
alcohol in Four Locos. And caffeine, real caffeine.
All four
God.
of the locos.
It was a good year of senior in high school.
Man, you would have enjoyed Surge. It is
Probably.
citrus soda.
I really
6
like
years
the-
ago, all Burger Kings and McDonald's Coca-Cola freestyle machines. I don't
I
know
lo-
that I've ever
I
seen
love
a
the-
freestyle machine in
Yeah, they do.
McDonald's.
Yeah, they do. I
They're
love
not
it because
here.
I love lime Coke.
Our
Not lemon.
Wendy's have it, but not our McDonald's. I
Yeah,
feel like
I-
McDonald's Coke is special. And I feel like
It
the
is.
freestyle machine would run that.
McDonald's does have a
the
very
freestyle
interesting flavor
machine
Coke.
always tastes a little bit like the drink the last person got, which I hate. I can't stand that. But
Yeah.
That's what they call it,
yes.
freestyle.
Yeah, restyle. Yeah, the McDonald's
like the
Diet
syrup.
Coke. Oh yeah, you just buy a box.
No, I stick my
Put a straw
finger on the squirter. I stick my finger onto the machine so that the syrup goes one way and the soda water goes the other way. And then I just fill my cup up with the syrup, go about my day. That was really hard to explain with Jason looking at me.
Yes. You see ya.
Yeah, there are people like me in this world. You have to be careful. We're gross and we don't.
Oh, I can't just take the whole thing out. I don't want
You never just filled your cup up with syrup?
to just put my finger
No.
on the squirter and
Is RC Cola okay, Jason? Do we need to record an ending?
Oh, this is the ending of the episode.
Andrew froze. That's all.
Gross.
Oh, God.